What's up guys, and welcome back to another Lorcana video. It's your boy Mike Skinner from First to 20, and today we're going to be jumping into the Ruby ink color, which I think is a really exciting color, has a lot of cool stuff in it. Before we get started, I just want to send out a huge thank you to everybody who subbed over this weekend, and I really appreciate all the follows, all the subs. You guys are really awesome, and I made sure to follow everybody back. I really want to build up this community, and really excited to be a part of it. Alrighty, wasting no time, we have Shield of Virtue. This is a 1-drop that can be used as ink. It is fireproof, so you can exert this card and pay 3 of your ink. And ready, chosen character, they cannot quest for the rest of the turn, and this is an item. This card is really versatile as it allows you to ready something that may have already attacked or may have already quested. The drawback is you can't quest again, but you could always attack into something or even just protect yourself from being attacked next turn. You could also combo this with things like Elsa to go ahead and lock down 2 characters in the same turn. Overall, I have been seeing this card quite a lot in my games, so I think this card's going to continue to be a good one. Alrighty, next up we have Minnie Mouse, always classy, and this is a 1-drop that can be used as ink, and it is a 1/3. Which is a good stat line. You know, we can go ahead and attack into things, not die to 2/2s. We've discussed this in other colors before, and she does provide 1 ink. This card may see some play just because there aren't a lot of 1-drops in this color, but overall, I think once some more sets come out and we have a little more option, I don't think she's going to see much play. Next up, he's got a sword! This is a 1-drop that can be used as ink. And chosen character gets +2 attack this turn, so just a solid, pump for a card. You can go ahead and play it. Get your guy +2 attack and then attack into something. This is probably going to be pretty good in limited when you're trying to, do little combat tricks and things like that. But overall, I don't see it getting a lot of play in regular format. Alrighty, next up we have Fan the Flames, another 1-drop that can be used as ink. This is an action, ready chosen character. They cannot quest during their next turn. So same thing as the Shield of Virtue, except the Shield of Virtue is a permanent that will stay there in play, and you can just use it again and again and again. But in a situation where you just want to pay 1 instead of having to pay the 1 and then the 3, so 4 total, this will get you the job done. But overall, I just think that Shield of Virtue is just a way better version of this card. Alrighty, next up we have Sergeant Tibbs, a courageous cat. This is a 1-drop that can be inked. So just like the 1-drop Stitch in the Amber ink and the 1-drop Duke in the Emerald ink, like I said, we don't have too many 1-drops in this color. So it's a solid 2/2 that can attack into things, and a late game you could always use it as ink, which is really nice. Alrighty, moving right along to the 2-drops, we have LeFou. He is an instigator, and this is a 2-drop that can be inked. And Fan the Flames is his ability, so when you play this character, ready chosen character, they cannot quest during the rest of the turn. So as you can see, quite a theme here with readying characters that are already exerted, which is really cool. So LeFou is really great because he is a 2/2, which is a solid stat line, and does produce 1 lore, but when he comes in, he goes ahead and unexerts something. So very early game, you can get in 2 attacks. So you play a 1-drop, attack into something, then play LeFou, ready your guy, and then attack into something else, and it kind of helps mitigate some of the early aggressive decks. So I do think LeFou is really, really good. Alrighty, next up we have Tangle, which is a 2-drop that can be inked. It is an action. Each opponent loses 1 lore. Okay, I can see this in multiplayer being pretty cool, but as far as a 1v1, not sure if this is a very usable card. I always say this with an asterisk because the next set could come out and there could be some super combo and all of a sudden this card is like a 4 of in every deck. But as of right now, as we're speaking, I don't think this card is good at all. Alrighty, we have Donald Duck, the man himself. This is Boisterous Fowl, and it's a 2-drop that can be inked. 2/3 is a great stat line for a 2-drop, and then it does produce 1 ink. So it's just a solid, no ability, but I've seen it in some decks just to be on curve, and you also can ink it. So just a solid card. Again, probably mostly for draft, but other than that, unfortunately, Donald I don't think is going to see a ton of play. Cut to the chase. This is a 2-drop that can be inked. It is an action, and chosen character gains Rush this turn, which allows them to attack the same turn that they're played. Honestly, right now, this card doesn't look super strong to me. Giving something Rush for 2 ink, I don't know. I feel like there's better things we could be doing with our 2 ink, but like I said, maybe in the future there's a reason to play this card, but right now I don't see it. Next up is actually one of my favorite villains of all time, funny enough. Gaston, Arrogant Hunter. He is a 2-drop that can be inked, which is really nice, and I think it's pretty appropriate that he has Reckless. This character cannot quest, and he has to challenge each turn if able. As you can see, he does not have a lore because he cannot use it, so he's just a 4/2 for 2, which is a really great stat line. The 2 in the defense here does kind of stink because he does usually die to whatever he runs into, but with the 4 attack, it really is able to trade into a lot of bigger things. So overall, Gaston has been a really great card. We have Peter Pan, Fearless Fighter, and this is a 3 cost that does not have the ink symbol on it, and it can rush. It's a 3/2, which I don't really care for that stat line too much for a 3-drop that can be inked. So overall, I just think there's better cards right now. But if you feel like playing a 3-drop with Rush, you have Peter Pan, Fearless Fighter. Alrighty, so next up we have an actually interesting one. So this is Poison Apple. It is a 3 cost that you cannot ink. It is an item, so it sits in play, and then you can take a bite. You can pay 1 and banish it to exert a character. So you can just go ahead and lock something down. But if it's a princess character, you destroy her instead. You banish her. So that is a really good effect considering there are some pretty powerful princesses in the game. So I'll be totally honest. So before last night, I didn't even look twice at this card. It seems decent, but I really didn't see a lot of value in it until somebody named Lee Xiao Mahan. So shout out to you. I hope I pronounced your name right. He was over in the Lorcana HQ Discord last night. They were having a little tournament. So if you haven't already jumped in that Discord, I highly recommend it. Yesterday was actually my first day in there, and I got to witness this, which was really cool. But he's playing a Tamatoa deck where he's able to revive this card over and over and over again and continue to play all these funky items and use them to destroy stuff. It was really cool. I really enjoyed it. I don't know, how much longevity that deck has, but he was doing really well in the tournament. So for now, I'm a believer, and Poison Apple is pretty good. Alrighty, next up we have Abu, the Mischievous Monkey. He is a 3 cost that can be inked, and he has a 3/2 stat line, but he does produce 2 lore, which is pretty nice. Truthfully, I haven't seen a lot of Abu. He is a vanilla card, so he doesn't provide any abilities, which I think is a pretty big drawback, but he does produce 2 lore, so that's nice. 3/2 stat line is decent. Overall, decent draft card, not too great in constructed. Okay, next up we have Aladdin Street Rat. This is a 3 cost that can be inked, and his ability is Improvise. So when you play this character, each opponent loses 1 lore. So now this card I think is incredibly good. So earlier we saw the card Tangle, which is a 2 cost that makes your opponent lose 1 lore. Well, for 1 more ink, we have a 3 cost 2/2. So it's an actual body that can attack and cast stuff and sing and do all that. It is a 1 lore, so he can quest if you need him to. And he has the same effect, and he can be shifted. So if you have the big bad Aladdin that we're going to get into later on, you can go ahead and just shift right on top of him. So this Aladdin is awesome. I've seen him in almost every Ruby list that I've seen, and he really helps mitigate the aggro decks as well. Even though it's only 1 lore, you play him multiple times a game, and it really does add up. Okay, next up we have actually one of my favorite cards in this color. This is Pongo, Old Rascal. He is a 4-drop. It can be inked. I guess he got off the leash, and you got to chase him around. He's hard to catch, so that gives him evasive. He is a 2/3, so we'd love to see a little bit better stats on him here, but the fact that he's harder to hit does make sense, and then he does produce 2 lore. So sometimes this guy comes down and is a house. Difficult to attack into him, and then he does produce that 2 lore. So he puts your opponent on the clock, and he demands an answer. You got to deal with him somehow, or else you will lose the game. So I really enjoy Pongo. I think he's a really solid 4-drop. This is Scar, Fiery Usurper. He is a 4 cost that can also be inked, and he is a 5/3. He has no effects, unfortunately, so he's just a stat stick. So we have another vanilla card, doesn't have any effect. He does produce 1 lore, but overall, just another draft card. Alrighty, so we have Sword of Truth. This is a 4 cost that cannot be inked. Final Enchantment is the ability. Banish this item, banish chosen villain character. So that deck that I mentioned earlier that was using Tamatoa to grab all sorts of items, this is another item on that list that I was very impressed with and honestly did not really look at twice. Being able to banish a chosen villain is actually incredibly strong. There are so many villains in the game. Even if you're not playing Tamatoa, I might see this in some control matchups. It's another form of removal. So overall, this card is pretty good. I like it a lot. And rounding out our 4-drops, we do have Elsa, Ice Surfer. She can be used as ink, and her ability is That's No Blizzard. Whenever you play a character named Anna, ready this character, and this character cannot quest the rest of the turn. So similar to where LeFou comes in and readies something, she does it with Anna. I think a little too situational unless you're playing Anna and her and you have some kind of cool deck going on with that theme. I think that could be okay. But overall, I would just rather play LeFou. So out of all the Elsas that we have and some really powerful ones, I think this is the one that's kind of just okay. Next up, we have Captain. This is Colonel's Lieutenant. It is a 5 cost that can be inked and just a 6/5 stat stick. No abilities here. So again, another draft card. All right, next up we have Maui, Hero to All. This is a 5-drop that can be used as ink. He has Rush and he has Reckless. So he has to attack every turn, but he can attack as soon as he comes down. And this is a 6/5. This card is the bee's knees. I have yet to see a red deck that does not play him. He is just so powerful. He deals with so many different threats. 6 attack is very, very good. Not a lot of things have 7 or 8 defense. There are a few, but most things Maui can go ahead and kill, and that 5 defense means he survives a lot of the time, so he's able to get multiple attacks in. This is a outstanding card and will be around for a while, I think. And if you've got deep pockets, we also have an enchanted version of this Maui, which I think is really cool, so be on the lookout for that one. Alright, sticking with the same movie here, we have Moana, Chosen by the Ocean. She is a 5 cost that can be inked, and This Is Not Who You Are is her ability, so when you play this character, you may banish chosen character named Taka. So, very on theme from the movie, if you've seen it. It is a 2/6, which is pretty good stats, but again, dies to Maui. I'm telling you, Maui is a beast. And 2 lore, so pretty decent. Overall, I think if Taka ever becomes a meta card, obviously this is a direct answer to Taka, but I just think it's a little too situational. I do like her 6 defense and her 2 lore here, but I don't see a lot of reason to really play her at the moment. Alrighty, next up we have Goofy, Daredevil. He is a 5 cost that can be inked as well. Similar to Pongo, this is another guy who's hard to deal with. He is a 3/4, so he's a little bigger than Pongo. So if you're trying to build some kind of evasive deck, so maybe hide from Maui so he's not running into all your guys all the time, you could definitely consider Goofy a pretty decent one. Alright, next up we have Imperial Soldier Mulan. She is a 5-drop that can be inked, and her ability is Lead by Example. So during your turn, when this character banishes another character in a challenge, your other characters get +1 lore this turn. So this is an interesting one, and I think there's going to be a deck for this card in the future. Right now, I just don't see it, but being able to go ahead and banish something and then give all your guys +1 lore for the turn, that does seem really powerful. She is a 4/5, so pretty decent stats. She only produces 1 lore herself for 5, which is not great, but I think it's more than worth it for being able to provide all that extra lore if your board is super wide. I have yet to see a home for her, but I think with more cards in the future, she will definitely have one. Alright, next up we have Dragonfire. This is a 5 cost that cannot be inked. It is an action. Pretty simple. Banish chosen character. It just kills something. This card is very powerful. I've seen it in almost all control decks. It's just a direct way to kill something, which is not very easy to do in this game. There are not a lot of cards that just deal with something on the spot, but this card does. Obviously, it cannot target characters that have Ward, so Ward is very powerful against this, but other than that, this does not discriminate. It will take you out, and it is a very strong card. Next up, we got Rapunzel letting down her hair. She is a 6-drop that cannot be inked, and her ability is Tangle, as we spoke about earlier. When you play this character, each opponent loses 1 lore. She is a 5/4, and she does produce 2 lore, so pretty nice on the 2 lore. However, for 6 cost, and she can't be inked, I just don't think her ability is good enough. Again, if you're playing some kind of multiplayer deck where you want everybody to lose lore around the table, I can see this being cute for that, but honestly, the ability is just not good enough. Tigger's up next, and this is a wonderful thing. And he is a 6-drop that can be inked, and he has evasive. So this is just another evasive guy in this color. So like I said, if you ever want to build an evasive deck, these are the ones you're looking for. He has a 4/4 stat line, and he does produce 2 lore. So there's quite a few guys here that do produce 2 lore, and they're evasive. So I don't know, I'd keep an eye on this. This is Stitch, Abomination. He is a 6 cost, and he does produce ink, and he is a 4/6 stat line. So unfortunately, still dies to Maui and doesn't kill Maui, but besides that, he does produce 3 lore, so this is really, really great. So this Stitch comes down, he doesn't have any effect, but he does start ending the game pretty quickly. But honestly, I think this card's pretty decent if you're looking for just a late game bomb to start ending the game. Speaking of late game bombs, we have Taka, the Burning One. This is a 6 cost that does not have ink, and he is reckless, so he has to attack every turn if able. He is an 8/6. I know I keep mentioning Maui, but again, Maui does run into this and kill it, and you could also play that Moana we talked about earlier to deal with it, but right now I haven't really seen this card in any decks, so I don't see there's a reason to play that Moana or this card. Alright, next up we have one of the strongest cards in the game at the moment. This is Be Prepared. It is a 7 cost that does not produce ink. It is a song, so it can be sung, which makes it very powerful, and the ability is Banish all characters. So yours and your opponents, they're gone. It's not considered a targeting effect, so even if the character has Ward, it does not discriminate. It will kill everything. So currently, this is the only board wipe in the game that just flat out kills everything. Obviously, an incredibly powerful card for control decks when they're trying to mitigate all these crazy aggressive strategies. It does cost 7, so unless you're playing a way to ramp up to it pretty quickly, sometimes you just die before you get to it. But if you're able to stick around, you could actually use a 7 cost to go ahead and play this card for free and then still follow up with a huge bomb after it, so you're the only one with the character in play. This card is probably the best card in the game right now, in my opinion. Following that, we have Captain Hook, Ruthless Pirate. It is a 7 cost that cannot be inked, and his ability is Rush and You Coward. So when this character is exerted, opposing characters with evasive gain Reckless. He is a 5/5, and he does produce 2 ink, which is nice. I think this is just one of the weaker 7 costs in the game, to be honest. I don't know how good it is to give all your opposing evasive characters Reckless. There aren't that many all evasive boards to begin with where this card would do something, and then even if it did, I guess it would stop them from questing for a turn or having to attack into you. but I just don't think it's that good at the moment. But if you want to talk about 7-cost cards that are very good, we have Aladdin, Heroic Outlaw. So he is a 7-drop, as I mentioned, and he can be inked, as opposed to Hook, which could not be inked. And he shifts in for 5, so if you play that other Aladdin, you can go ahead and play him on turn 5, which is incredibly powerful, being that he can attack that same turn. And Daring Exploit, so during your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, you may gain 2 lore, and your opponent loses 2 lore. So he is a 5/5 that also produces 2 lore himself. So this guy is an absolute animal. If you don't have any characters to attack, you can still use him for 2 lore every turn, which is really nice. But mostly I see him as a huge answer to aggro decks because he does kill a lot of stuff and he does recuperate some of that early lore when your opponent is just going crazy. There's also a beautiful enchanted version of this card. I really love this art, and it's definitely going to be one of the ones that I'm looking for. Alright, so we're getting into the 8 costs. These are the endgame bombs here. So this is Scar, Shameless Firebrand. He cannot be inked. Unfortunately, I don't think the earlier Scars are all that great, but if you do play it, you can shift him for 6, and his ability is Rousing Speech. So when you play this character, ready your characters with a cost of 3 or less. They cannot quest for the rest of the turn. He is a 6/6, and he does produce 1 lore. So for 8 cost, I do think only being able to produce 1 lore is pretty unfortunate. I wish he at least put 2 out there. I could see in a situation where you have a lot of low cost cards and you want to go ahead and ready them all so that you can attack into stuff or maybe stop them from being attacked into. That could be pretty decent. But the problem is most cards right now that are low cost are in aggressive decks. And those decks don't want to be attacking into your guys anyway. They want their guys to be alive as long as possible so they can go ahead and keep putting out lore. I just think he's outshined by some of the better late game cards in this color. One of which is Mickey Mouse, Brave Little Tailor, or BLT as most people are calling him, which really makes me hungry. So just like the other evasives before, this is another hard to deal with threat, except now we're pumping out 4 lore. So this is a heavy bomb. I love that he has ink on him because you can use him early game and use him as ink, and then late game when you draw him, he's a huge card. Although he is evasive, he's not invincible, so he can be killed by things like Dragonfire, be prepared, or even be attacked into by another evasive character, but he demands an answer. If your opponent does not have one of those ways to kill it, he will end the game very quickly. And finally, Maleficent Monstrous Dragon. This is a 9 cost, so huge card. It does produce ink, which as I mentioned is super nice because you can use a lot of these cards early game as ink and then keep them around late game for bombs. And Dragon Fire. When you play this character, banish a chosen character. It is a 7/5 that produces 2 lore, so really nice attack stat. It can attack into a lot of things, as it should. It's a 9-drop, but it also just kills something. So if your opponent has that Brave Little Tailor in play and they're pumping lore, you can just play Maleficent, boom, headshot, no more. You wouldn't play in an aggressive deck because you'll never see it, but all the control matchups are playing this card, and I have noticed that a lot of games come down to who's got more of these dragons. Alright guys, and that wraps up our Ruby review. Thank you guys so much for watching. I've been trying to make it a little quicker so you're not watching an hour-long video of me talking. So I hope I was able to provide information in a little bit more of a compact format. But let me know, do you like these kind of long-form videos, or do you prefer a much shorter, rapid-fire version? And what do you guys think? Are you going to be playing this color when you play your decks? I think it's a really powerful one. Personally, I've been playing it with Amethyst and a control list, but I can definitely see aggressive strategies in this color as well. So I think it's a really, really strong contender, and I think it will be one of the popular ones. We're just 4 days away from the game, guys. Get hype. I just found out my LCS, unfortunately, is going to be upcharging on the boxes and the packs, so probably going to be playing with proxies for a while, but I hope you guys are able to get some awesome product, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be safe out there. Be kind. Peace.